Good morning, subscribers. Geekonomics here once again, bringing you the next in the chapter with regard to the 100-year life. I believe this is chapter 7. Indeed it is, ladies and gentlemen. There we go, chapter 7 on money and what we need to do with regard to making provisions for our retirement. So that then leaves us, I think there are maybe 2, possibly 3 chapters left. So we're almost through to the end of this very interesting book, ladies and gentlemen. So let me just set this to one side and take you through this. I am conscious that maybe I'm not zoomed in quite far enough on these videos for you to make out the text on the board, but I'll have a little review of this one later and see if that is the case. So, as I said, this particular chapter is all to do with money and providing for your retirement. And it starts off really by explaining that the whole notion of money is a very complicated thing to understand. There are not many people who are that financially literate. It's a very complicated thing to get your head around. Particularly, the authors go and cite the fact that the terminology around money is quite a difficult thing to grasp. And so that is obviously one of the things, it's quite off-putting, isn't it? If something is difficult, you don't really get stuck into it and try to figure it out for yourself. So anyway, what they go on to say is that we will obviously, and this has been stated in previous chapters, you'll either need to work longer and save more, or probably both, in order to provide for a longer life. Now, of course, that means that if you're saving more today, there's an opportunity cost there because you're giving up goods that you could purchase today, hopefully, to have a larger pension in the future. So, we talk about this notion, as you well know in economics, the notion of opportunity cost. However, that opportunity cost is maybe worthwhile because in a recent survey cited by the authors in the book, 70% of employees stated that they wish that they had put more money aside throughout their maybe 30s, 40s, 50s in order that they had a larger provision in their retirement. And so we must think to ourselves, and you must think to yourself, am I making the right decisions today for my future? Will my 70 or 80-year-old self look back on my days at work in my 30s, 40s, 50s and think, you did the right thing there? So, what about spending in your retirement? This is an aspect which is covered in this particular chapter as well. So, first of all, when you are retired, you obviously have much more free time. Now, those of you who do have free time, in particular, I find this during the summer holiday, for example, when you have a lot of free time, you spend a lot more money because obviously you have much more leisure time, and therefore when you've got much more leisure time, you fill that with much more activities, and therefore you spend more money. So in my leisure time in the summer, I spend a lot of time surfing. Maybe when I'm 70 or 80, I'll still be popping up on the surfboard. But you're going to spend more money because you have more free time. However, you might do more DIY. So DIY, of course, is a way of saving money. I will not be doing any DIY because I can barely wire a plug. However, DIY, for those of you who are dexterous in that way, then you might be able to save some money that way. You will obviously also be entitled to discounts and concessions. So you might get free travel on buses and trains and all sorts of concessions for going to the cinema and various places of entertainment, leisure centres and so on and so forth. And so again, that is a way of saving money. Set that against then what you'll have to pay for. Well, you'll probably have to pay for some type of health care, and you might need some type of care in order to help you to remain in your own home and to live in your own home for the rest of your days. You might need somebody to come in and just help with odd jobs here and there. So you need to think about that. Now the authors would suggest that maybe one way of not expecting to have so many things to do and so much spending in your retirement is simply to moderate your spending today. So if you moderate the consumption now, and you have less, a smaller basket of goods, as we would refer to it in our economics, then that means that in the future you'll not expect to have an enormous basket of goods because you'll just be sort of used to having this smaller basket. And of course you may also consider, well, and we're making an assumption sort of throughout the book here, that actually by the time you get to retirement you'll own your own home. Well, of course many people by the time they get to retirement age will not own their own homes. And if you have to pay rent, then you will need to have a greater provision in your pension in order to pay your rent and pay for everything else that you will need. So don't forget that. So how might you fund your retirement, ladies and gentlemen? If I switch sides, you could possibly downsize. So if you own your own home, you might sell it, you might downsize, and therefore you're releasing money out of that. Now, of course, again, that's problematic because you'll have lived somewhere where all of your friends probably live and there's an emotional attachment to that particular property, and so you may not want to downsize. You may have lots of equity in your home, and so you could embark upon one of these equity release schemes. Now, these equity release schemes are not without fault, and I will be uploading a video on this quite soon because last week's Sunday Times Money section, they had a tremendous little section in that money section about, sorry for using the word section all the time, they had a tremendous little article about equity release and the problems inherent with it. You might have stocks and shares built up, you might have a portfolio of stocks and shares. Now again, remember, if you want high reward, that generally involves high risk. So you must weigh up the risk and reward scenario. And then the authors at the end of this chapter, they liken this whole notion of let's moderate my spending today so I'm not used to having everything, so when I retire I don't need to have everything. This lovely quote here, St. Augustine, "Lord, make me chaste, but not yet." And we're all a bit like that, aren't we? We all want to do the right thing, but we don't want to do it just quite yet. And so trying to moderate our spending today, very difficult to control, and indeed the authors compare it to a small boy riding on an elephant. And the elephant wants to go left, but the boy wants to go right. Well, who's in control there? It's the elephant, of course. And they liken our own sort of spending desires today to that elephant. We're sort of out of control, and although our minds want to control it and to go in the right direction, oftentimes we go in the wrong direction. So here endeth the lesson in that respect, ladies and gentlemen. So that's it, chapter 7. See you next week with chapter 8. Bye for now.